everyone. I hope you're doing well and that all your hatches are well battened, etc., etc. This is a short video on how to turn the constraints of being quarantined right now into potentially affordances for your project. I know it feels like all of the avenues are pretty much blocked off, but I think that there are opportunities that are going to come with the situation that we find ourselves in if we know how to look for them. If you see me glancing off to the side, that's because that's where my notes are. All right. So turning constraints into affordances. Constraint number one, you are locked in a house with the same people for the next who knows how long. For most of you, those people are going to be your family, although I'm not going to assume that that's the case for all of you. Or that if it were the case that you would even want to talk to your family. But being in your family home, if you are, one way to turn that into an affordance is asking yourself what you have access to when you're at home that you might not have access to at other times. Are there materials? Are there recordings, anything like that that you can get your hands on now that you wouldn't be able to otherwise? Are there photographs you can go through with family members and maybe turn up some interesting memories or stories or things that people haven't thought of in a long time that could lead to some new insights? So that is one direction that you can go in. If you are trapped in a house with multiple people and that is a constraint for you, you can always think about what can be gained by having multiple people around you. Once I did a project where I asked both of my parents to tell me the story of how they met, and it was really interesting to see what was similar but also what was different and what took the focal point in their different stories. Now, just doing that on its own is not going to be enough. Just here's mom's story, here's dad's story, they're kind of different, boom, isn't actually a moment of reflection. You'd need to push it further and try and find some sort of significance to that, but that could be an interesting starting point potentially. You can get story. There was also a time 2 years ago when I was home and I was over Christmas. I asked my parents about a story that seemed to have some holes in it from when I was younger in my memory, and I'm not going to get into the details on it, but the information that came out during that conversation really strongly changed my perceptions of the event. So any kind of investigative rabbit trails that you can follow that way could be very useful for you for the purposes of this assignment. If you are not staying with your family, in some ways that's even better because that means that there's somebody whose stories you don't necessarily know all of yet. There's a lot to plumb there, a lot of opportunities to learn new things and bring your own fresh perspective to their life in ways that could be fruitful for storytelling later. So that's constraint number one, some ideas of how to turn those into affordances. Constraint number two is the only way to talk to outside people is to talk over the phone. I put already in the prompt some resources for recording phone calls. So just a reminder, Pennsylvania is a state that requires you to have both people's permission in order to record any kind of phone call or interaction, even if the other person is in a state where it's legal to record people against their will, so or without their knowing, or both. You must have the other person's permission in order to record. Okay, so that's just adding more constraints. What are the affordances? Are there stories that are actually improved by the fact that you are making phone calls? Can the phone calls themselves become part of the story? Can you do an investigation where you call different people and try and track down the story of something or get to the bottom of an issue? Are there things where being denied face-to-face contact helps the story be told, or where that's part of the story? I think it's kind of funny that Love is Blind is part of the national discussion right now, that Netflix dating show where people can't see each other, they can only hear each other over the phone. And then here we are in this real life Love is Blind scenario. Uh, what's it like for people who are on Tinder right now? You're not supposed to get together with people, right? So, has there been a move into more old fashioned courtship? What would it be like? Oh man, this would be so good. This would be so good, but I could not do it. But what if you made a Tinder account and talked, and on the Tinder account just said, I'm doing a project and I'm interested in talking to people who are on Tinder about their experiences during the quarantines, and then you like talked to people and interviewed people over the phone about this stuff. Like, are you going to strike out or just get generic answers most of the time? Yeah, but who knows? You could find something really interesting in this process. So think about things like that. Think about all the different uh, ways that not seeing people or being long distance or having people pick up the phone could be part of the story that you're trying to tell. Um, I think that um, I think it's very possible to have some very interesting stories come out of this, even though it seems like there are a lot of restrictions put on what we can do. So